Years ago, when I beat Dark Souls 1 for the first time, that was pretty hard. Dark Souls 3 was also pretty hard. La-Mulana 1 was harder than either one of them, because it didn't just demand good combat performance like Dark Souls games do. It demanded that you think in ways that require you to turn your brain into a 9-dimensional pretzel knot. Now, La-Mulana 2 is an entirely new level of transcendent insanity, and unfortunately, it has defeated me. I'm still gonna finish it. I need to, I want to, even if it takes me 3 years, I'll finish it. But I can't do it, honestly. I've already been spoiled on some puzzle details, so in the real way that actually matters, this game has beaten me, and I only had one chance, and blah blah blah, it's gone now, who cares? So even if I need to get through some of the more obscure, obtuse, puzzly pieces with a friend's help, spoiling, pieces of wackadoodle crazy puzzle logic that I would never figure out on my own, even if I can't do that stuff myself, there's still a value to the game's combat and platforming, which this video will show. This video will show the final successful attempts that I got on 6 of the mid-bosses in the activated Hall of Malice. That's like 3 bosses in 2 3-boss chunks, so 6 total. Took me about 2.5 hours of failed attempts to get this far. Yeah, that does not bode well for my future chances at this game. First of those 6 bosses is this one, Chimera. And here I choose to praise a little bit of Narimura's character design. Our fictional landscape of the shows we watch and the stuff we read and the games we play, all of that is just completely oversaturated with fictional characters. Everything from anime girls to D&D monsters. We just have got so many fictional characters that no one can keep track of them all. So it's noteworthy when somebody manages to make a new novel character design that just makes you stop and go, huh, that's kind of clever. And this one did. So a Chimera is nothing new. They appear in video games all the time. But having the 3 different heads mounted to a rotating headboard that you would normally find in the den of some rich big game trophy hunter, that struck me as, that's kind of clever. I mean, usually the headboard that has the trophy heads mounted to it in the den doesn't rotate. Kind of makes the big game trophy hunter seem like he might be a demented clown villain on the side. But even so, clever character design. Kudos to the team. The board rotates between 2 halves. The background half, which is kind of darkened and not highlighted, where the enemies are not attacking and they are not vulnerable to your attacks, and the front half that is highlighted where they are attacking and are vulnerable to your attacks. They shoot different patterns of fireballs that you can learn with a little bit of practice, and then it's just mostly a matter of kind of crouching low, dodging the low, punted fireballs from the lion's mouth, and slashing the crap out of it whenever you can. Speaking of novel character design, so the Colchian dragon, I googled this, and Colchis is apparently a ancient site in modern-day Georgia in the Middle East. So, certainly looks like no other dragon I've ever seen. At first I thought it was talking about some organ inside the human body, because the dragon's form kind of looks like somebody grabbed your voice box and ripped it out and pulled your trachea along with it. So this boss is really predictable. Honestly, it's just a matter of timing for knowing where its head is going to slam down, knowing when its tail might flick out and try to hit you, and the fireballs. This one, too, is pretty easy to get with practice, but failure is punished quite harshly, because touching its body is really, really damaging. 2 down. Next up is the classic 3-headed dog of the underworld, Severus. And I lucked into what seems to be a mostly safe spot, at least for the first stage of this mid-boss. This is the first time I'd gotten this far, so I had no idea what I was doing. I'll cut out some of the ridiculously repetitious footage here of me just standing in place and swinging my weapon because I'm too terrified to move. Not wanting to jump up that high and start slamming my face into the final of the 3 heads, I started using flares. And the way that this head jerks up and back every time you hit it rather reminded me of the final boss of Super Metroid. You know, when you're pelting Mother Brain with Hyper Beam and her head, like, snaps all the way up and back every time you hit her. Man, it's fortunate I brought tons of ammo into this place, because now a face sprouts out of Severus's tail and starts spraying you with blue rings of death. But I quickly found that it only ever sprays at a downward angle, so you can step up on the platform and shoot it to death with shurikens, which was the safe way to do things, and I had tons and tons of shurikens, so why not? But it's also super boring and repetitious, so we'll skip this too. Three down. That gave me access back to this area's save point, and thank God. I was a slightly nerve-jangled wreck after beating those 3 bosses for the first time. Next up is a weird skullhead with a bunch of snakes coming out of it, Ladon. It doesn't get a name placard, though, weirdly. You just tell its name by the item that it drops. This is just about staying in close, using your shield, using your weapons to slowly pick off the snakes, and then beat the crap out of the skull when it has no defenses. Pretty easy. So that's 4 down. The most interesting of the mid-boss rush so far is this one, number 5, Faya. Now, Faya is hard. Like, understanding the concept is not too difficult. She intermittently throws, like, wind projectiles at you that you have to dodge. In her second form, it alternates which one takes damage, either Faya herself or her warthog mount, and you have to kind of bounce back and forth between which one you're attacking. But the tricky part is that because they're all over the place so much, you have to, like, kind of watch the screen agnostically and track maybe 2 or 3 pieces of visual information all at once. Otherwise, you just get slaughtered. And it was pretty hard, but it was a rewarding, invested kind of hard. I value the feeling I got from practicing and getting better at this one mid-boss. So that's 5 down. Now the final mid-boss for now, Karkinos, which apparently is a giant crab monster from Greek mythology. This was the worst and most annoying of the mid-bosses I've done so far, easily, because it acts in a very predictable pattern. There's a mostly safe spot you can hide in the upper left, which you'll see me do, and it occasionally sprouts its eyeball up, which you can go over and stab it with your rapier. Now, having a boss with very predictable behavior is not a problem in and of itself, but this boss just has too much health, way too much health, and it is vulnerable so infrequently. If I were a lot better at this game, I probably could have used caltrops or spears to shoot the eye while standing above it, but I didn't trust my reaction times with the lasers and the claws flying all over the place. So the lion's share of this footage is just me repeating the same pattern over and over again. We'll skip to the end because there's really no point in watching this all the way through. Six down. And pleasantly, defeating Karkinos means that I actually have an exit from the Hall of Malice, so I can use my Grail to warp again. I immediately warped back to the surface so I could heal. Short video, but that's all I've got done for now. I will upload more when I have the opportunity to sit down and play. Quick side note. Do you guys believe that we actually made it to 2020? It doesn't even seem real. Kind of crazy, isn't it?